I would do technical exploitation in support of source operations. So, is this guy saying and doing what he's telling us that he's saying and doing? Deriving that intelligence through technical means. Or in other cases, I would be deploying with like an ODA team, and I would be running the signals intelligence gear or the cyber gear to kind of like get them down to the last mile of their target. So we would know, for instance, and I'm just doing this hypothetically, bad guy X was like in a market area, or he was in a housing complex or something, but we didn't know exactly which one he was, or there wasn't good photos of him, or the photos we had were old, or they just needed to know exactly what building he was in. So I'd either go before them and kind of scout things out. I'm kind of using loose terms. I'm not being exact, obviously.
Would you dress like
Yeah, sometimes we'd go out, either getting vehicles that match the vehicles that were in the area, growing our beards out, trying to blend in as much as possible. And then other times it was, we're the lead vehicle in a Humvee convoy and we're going straight to the house. And then my job was as a guy with like the glasses with tape over the middle and pocket protector and my computers and all of that stuff. Like even today, I don't travel anywhere without my computers. I'd be like, well, he's in that house, guys. And then, then the guys like Tim Kennedy or guys, mutual acquaintances that you probably have from the special operations background, would be the guys that actually go in there. And then once all the killing was done or arresting was done, then it was my job to collect cell phones, collect laptops, and do triage, like a nurse would do triage on people who are wounded. I do triage on the gear, derive as much immediate technical intelligence as possible, and try to queue operations in the next 12, 24, 72 hours because those networks, news can travel slower back then than they normally would. So what intelligence is on these devices that might lead to another killer capture in the next 12, 24 hours? It was my job and with a team of guys to go through that stuff, tip more intelligence tips, rolling on targets. Sometimes we'd roll 6, 8 hours later. Like there'd be an operation, it would lead to some intelligence that had a time, like this is how much time we have. It would lead to that, and then we'd run out. And so I was by no means, I was not like a long tabber. I was not an ODA guy or like an A team guy. I was not a SEAL. I was intelligence support to those guys. First traditional special forces units, or what we'd call like Green Berets. And then to JSOC, or Joint Special Operations Command. So,
which is incredibly important because I'll relate this to myself. So before a game, we would have there's scouts, right,
yep,
that are like watching all of the film from the team on the team we're about to play.
yep,
So they're going to give us all this information on this team, backfield sets, everything that you need to know, tendencies, all these different tendencies, and then when you get to the game, you know exactly what's happening.
yes,
So when you see it, you recognize it, and it's like if I don't, have, we don't as players, we don't have the time to go
no,
dig through all that stuff. We'll find like little things that an offensive lineman will do, to tip off like if it's a run or pass, stuff like
yep,
that. But
yep,
as far as like their tendencies on like certain down on distances and everything, and that work was so important. We used to call it the FBI, football intelligence.
yeah, funny, yeah,
So they would go in there and it was like dudes that really never even played football that are in there just like skimming through hours and hours of film and bringing us all this information and then breaking it down and simplifying it for us. So as a, I guess you could relate me to an operator,
yep, yep, yep.
it made my job so much easier.
Actionable intelligence,
Yeah.
like stuff I can use on the field.
Yeah. It was awesome. And I love that. So I'm sure that those guys really relied on your information because
Yeah,
that's like it's so important. And then to know that like, okay, we went in here, busted this place up, you pulled all their computers and their cell phones and all this other shit and their hard drives, and you dig through that really quick. And then for you to find something really fast
yep,
that hasn't, that can lead to another target, like you said, like 6 hours later, you're on another target.
yep,
That stuff's invaluable. So
yep, yep.
I wouldn't sell yourself short on that because that's extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes I'll explain these things to people, or I'll get some like undue credit, and they'll start confusing me with the guy on the field or the guy who was doing that. So I always try to make it really clear that I was the intelligence support guy because I was not the operator. I was not the guy on the field. Um, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people that did that. But yeah, I mean, football I think would be another useful analogy for a hunter. or for an operator for a military guy, because especially in the NFL at the level that you guys did it, I think that preparation, or what I would have called intelligence preparation of the battlefield, I think those guys probably did it just as well as we did within legal, right? Because they're, you don't want people out there filming, whatever, people got in trouble for in the past.
Yeah, you can't film practices,
Right.
other people's practices,
Yeah.
but you got to think of this, right? So like game day, like what you see on TV when you watch a game, when you can hear the quarterback, the things he's saying,
Yeah,
you think we're not skimming through that to get tendencies?
for sure.
There used to be like words, I'd hear a word and I'm like, I know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
So I can just go make the play,
Useful
It's just
intelligence.
about getting by the guy that's trying to stop you.
I think I've seen a pretty funny video of Peyton Manning where people are trying to figure out like his pre-snap, like what he's saying on,
Yeah.
like, as he's calling, or there's an audible or something like that. Like, oh, he keeps saying Oklahoma. What's
Omaha.
that mean?
He said
Omaha.
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 But like he would have dummy words.
Yeah.
Because Peyton is one of the smartest teammates I've ever been around.
For sure.
As far as like, nobody could get his tendencies down. Like I practiced against this guy every day for 4 years. And I was like always confused. I was like, how does these offensive linemen know what play they're going to run?
Right.
How do they know?
Yeah.
Because I can't get a tendency on any of this stuff. And I'm going against him every single day.
Yeah.
And he just changes things up. And those Omahas and stuff like that, those code words, that usually means that whenever he breaks a huddle, he usually has 2 or 3 plays that could potentially be ran. There's a run, a pass, and then usually like a screen or something else like
Sure.
that, So he'll switch those, in play, and that's where he's audibling and changing things around. But you can never get a key on what his actual verbiage is because he changes it every week.
Yeah.
And that's why he was so successful, is because he was unpredictable.
I would say as a aside to that, the amount of money that goes in the NFL and the planning and what comes with a Super Bowl victory, I would say there's probably far better planners and far better analysis that goes into what you see in the NFL versus what you'd see in a military unit, by virtue of, our budgets are much smaller. Our ability to examine the enemy is much more minimalized. So I bet you there's a lot of crosstalk that could occur between those types of things. Of course, in the military, we got to break the law. So, it was my job when we weren't running operations to be the guy who was figuring out a way to film a practice,
Yeah.
to, crack a password and get access to a playbook and figure out exactly what Omaha meant. Because, the gloves kind of came off for us in that regard, because life and blood and treasure was on the line.
Yeah.
So, we kind of, with the exception of the Geneva Conventions, we kind of pulled all of the stops out, and we try to do that at a very high level. So I always had a tremendous amount of respect. I think I told you when I came here, I was wearing a Colts shirt. I've always been a huge Indianapolis Colts fan. Had season tickets. My buddy still has them. I'll usually go to 1 or 2 Indy games a year. A lot of that was born out of, I have some family out there, but most of it was born out of my respect for Peyton Manning, his ability to prepare, and the way that he can command a field. And one of the things I was thinking when you talked about his intelligence, and I think it's funny, is it's going to be funny now that I say I think it's funny, is that a sense of humor and a quick wit is one of the highest predictors for intelligence.
Yeah.
And Peyton's one of the funniest dudes when it comes to like commercials, the stuff he does with his brother. It's like, and people are surprised. And I'm like, no, it doesn't surprise me that one of the smartest dudes to ever walk on a football field is also hilarious.
Yeah.
Because those two things, intelligence and quick-wittedness and the neurons firing, I think go hand in hand. So, that to me, and what goes into winning a Super Bowl, and the preparation and how everyone has to pull their weight and be involved at a very high level, I think has, more corollaries that can be drawn than I could probably come up with in a 2-hour podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the thing I notice most about, when I bring a veteran in here,
Mhm.
we can relate on so many levels, but I always have so much respect because the bullets weren't flying at me. Like the stakes weren't as high, right?
Yeah.
We had,
In a lot of ways, but in
but
some
we
ways,
would go into it's the same part of your brain that you have to turn on.
Yeah.
When it comes to like adrenaline, being able to keep yourself under control when things are like out of control,
Yes.
and staying under control when everything around you is out of control. You control what you can control, which is your attitude and your preparation and all that stuff. So,
And the dude across from you is trying to kill you.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he wants to run through you.
Yeah,
right?
those guys want to. They want to, like, they get paid too. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So-
exactly. Yeah.
So it is very similar.